The year is 479 BCE. On a beach near Salamis, the tide pulls at charred wood and broken shields. The sand is black with ash. The air tastes like salt and smoke and something else. Something copper, something wrong. The Persian fleet is gone. Burned, scattered, defeated. Greece won, that's what the poets will say. That's what they'll carve into marble and sing in symposiums for the next 2,000 years. But right now, on this beach, there's a sound coming from the hills that no epic will ever mention. Screaming, not the battle kind, not the kind that comes with adrenaline and glory and the promise of a quick death. This is different. High-pitched, raw, the kind that scrapes your throat until there's nothing left but breath and terror, and the awful realization that no one is coming to help you. It's coming from a tent city that stretches for miles along the coast. Thousands of canvas shelters, row after row, flapping in the wind like the sails of a ghost fleet. These aren't barracks, they're holding pens, and inside them are the spoils of war, not gold, not land, women, daughters of Athens, Corinth, Thebes, Megara, girls who watched their fathers die in the streets, mothers who hid their children in cisterns and wells and storage jars, praying they'd suffocate quietly rather than be found. Women who thought the worst thing that could happen was watching their cities burn. They were wrong, because they're still alive. And what Xerxes and his commanders did to them in the months that followed, what they systematically did, wasn't mercy. It wasn't even simple cruelty. It was something the ancient world had a word for, something our history books prefer to translate as enslavement. But that's not what it was. What happened to these women, documented in Persian administrative tablets, recorded in Greek testimonies, traced in the bones found in mass graves near Sardis, was systematic, calculated, designed not just to punish Greece, but to erase it from the inside out. The question isn't whether you can stomach the truth, it's whether you're willing to remember what they endured while the rest of the world celebrated Greek victory. If you've ever wondered why certain chapters of history are told through the lens of men on battlefields and not the women left behind in the ruins, you're in the right place. Here on Crimson Historians, we dig into the archives the world forgot, the tablets buried under palace floors, the mass graves no one talks about, the one-line testimonies carved into stone by people who knew they'd be erased. Before we go further, if you're drawn to documented records like these, stories that don't make it into Hollywood films, then subscribe to Crimson Historians. Every like, every share, every subscription helps us uncover more accounts that were deliberately left out of the narrative. Return with me to that coastline, for what happened next challenges everything your textbooks chose to tell you. The tragedy of Hellas's daughters cannot be understood without first dissecting the mechanism that destroyed them. Xerxes I wasn't just a king, he was the living embodiment of an empire that stretched from the Indus to the Aegean, an empire that didn't conquer through brute force alone, but through a system so efficient, so deeply embedded in Persian culture, that it functioned like a second government. It was called the harem system, but that word doesn't capture what it really was. It wasn't about pleasure, it wasn't about luxury or silken cushions, or the fantasies that would later corrupt our understanding. It was about control, about taking the daughters of your enemies and turning them into symbols of submission, about breeding the next generation of mixed-blood administrators who owed loyalty to Persia, not to the lands their mothers came from. When Xerxes invaded Greece in 480 BCE, he brought with him 500,000 men. Soldiers, yes, but he also brought something else, slavers, scribes, officials whose job wasn't to fight, it was to catalogue every city that fell, every island that surrendered, every village that resisted and burned. They documented it all, who lived, who died, and most importantly, who could be taken. The girls were the priority. Not because the Persians were uniquely cruel, many ancient empires did this, but because Xerxes understood something that most conquerors didn't. You don't just defeat a people by killing their men, you defeat them by taking their daughters and ensuring the next generation grows up speaking your language, worshipping your gods, forgetting their mothers ever had another home. By the time the Persian army retreated after Salamis and Plataea, over 40,000 Greek women and children had been absorbed into the Persian administrative network. 40,000. Most were shipped east to Sardis, Susa, Persepolis. Some were placed in estates as domestic labour. Others, especially the young, the beautiful, the daughters of noble families, were taken into the royal harem system. Not for what you think, for integration. If this moment in history doesn't move you to learn more, you might be missing the lesson our ancestors died to teach. That the most dangerous thing an empire can do isn't kill you. It's make you forget who you were. The beach at Phaleron, just south of Athens. Summer 479 BCE. The Persian army is preparing to retreat, but not empty-handed. Greek civilians, those who didn't flee in time, those too old or too young or too stubborn to run, are being processed. That's the word the Persians used. Processed. Like grain, like timber, like cargo. There's a man overseeing the operation. His name is Artabazos, a Persian general whose name appears in Herodotus on administrative seals found in the ruins of Persepolis. He's not watching the battle, he's watching the harvest. That's what they called it in Persian. Bar Giriftan, the taking of yield. The women are separated first, then sorted by age. Girls under 12 sent to one group. They'll be raised as servants, taught Persian, integrated slowly over years until the Greek words for mother and home feel foreign on their tongues. Women over 30 sent to labour camps in Thrace, Phrygia, places where life expectancy is measured in seasons, not years, but the ones in between, the ones aged 13 to 25. Those are the ones Artabazos examines personally. A girl is pulled from the line. She's from Megara, maybe 16. Her hair is matted with dust and salt, her tunic torn at the shoulder. She doesn't resist, not because she's compliant, but because she's already learned what happens when you do. Her mother screams anyway. A Persian soldier strikes her across the face, hard enough to drop her to her knees, but he doesn't kill her. They need her alive, to watch, because that's part of the system too. You don't just take the daughters, you make the mothers understand that resistance is pointless, that even their daughters' bodies belong to the empire now. The girl from Megara is led to a tent. Inside there's a scribe, Persian, seated at a low table with clay tablets and a stylus. He doesn't look at her face, he looks at her teeth, her hands, the way she stands. He's recording details, age, height, condition of teeth, presence of scars, evidence of virginity. These aren't soldiers, they're administrators. This is a bureaucracy. An intact seal from Persepolis, translated in the 1930s by the German archaeologist Ernst Herzfeld, includes a line that reads, "Delivered to Susa, 120 Greek females, ages 14 to 22, sorted and prepared for royal service, from Athens, Thebes and Corinth. Condition acceptable. Condition acceptable." That's how the Persian Empire saw the daughters of Hellas, as inventory. But here's where it gets worse, because what happened next wasn't random cruelty, it was policy. The girls selected for the harem system were put on ships headed east, but not all of them. Some were kept back, held in camps along the coast of Asia Minor for weeks, sometimes months. Why? Because the Persians had learned something from previous conquests. If you take a woman and immediately place her in service, she resists, she remembers. She holds on to hope that someone will come for her, that her city will ransom her, that the gods will intervene. But if you break her first, if you strip her of her name, her language, her sense of self, then she integrates smoother. And the most effective way to break someone isn't through violence. It's through humiliation, through forcing them to participate in their own erasure. There's an account, fragmentary, preserved in a collection of Greek epitaphs from the 4th century BCE. A woman named Cleis from Corinth. She was 13 when the Persians took her. She survived. Decades later, she returned to Greece as an old woman and left an inscription at a temple near Olympia. It reads, "I was Clys, daughter of Nicodemus. They took me in the year of the fire. They gave me a new name I will not speak. I served in the house of the king's cousin for 16 years. When they freed me, I had forgotten the hymns my mother taught me. I have come here to remember. This stone will remember for me." 16 years. She was 29 when she was freed, and she had forgotten the hymns. That's not enslavement. That's cultural annihilation. The camps where these women were held weren't prisons. They were re-education centres. Girls were taught Persian, how to bow in the Persian manner, how to prepare Persian food, wear Persian dress, adopt Persian mannerisms. Those who resisted were starved. Those who complied were rewarded with slightly better treatment. And those who resisted too much. There's a mass grave near Sardis, excavated in 1958. It contains the remains of over 300 women, dated to the early 5th century BCE. The bones show signs of malnutrition, blunt force trauma, evidence of systematic abuse.